right, we're getting started here. Hello to everyone.
Hey, hey Neil. Hey,
Hey.
Erwin, Alex.
Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining the room. So we're in the same room at the same place at the same time. So Alli and I, we worked together for, officially since March, but before that, a long time.
Yeah. I was doing freelancing, doing blog posts, making the comic, everybody's favorite.
Yeah, we loved. We loved it so much. We thought to ourselves, how can we get to work even more with Alli? So yeah, it's been great since then. But and then we're sitting there saying to ourselves over the summertime, wait a minute, we've never actually met face to face a single time.
Beautiful Seattle. Well, Bellevue.
Yeah.
Do people get annoyed if you say
it's
Seattle and it's Bellevue?
Okay, so I moved here 10 years ago from LA, and I was like, oh, I live in Seattle. And everybody let me know very, very quickly that I did not live in Seattle.
We're not Seattle, we're in Bellevue, which is very beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice place. So here we are, and we're actually at the data literacy offices here in downtown Bellevue. There we go. Hi to Lisa as well. Lisa and I, we taught together for many years at the University of Washington. Yeah. Hi, Mohammed and Marie and Jonathan.
Oh, Becky Jones. I know Becky Jones.
Oh, we've heard of, yeah. So Becky, our team member, is calling in from home, I think, or from the road, maybe. Yeah. Great. All right. So
we are talking leading in the age of data, but we specifically want to talk about the things we wish our leadership knew when we were, when you were leading people.
Yeah.
I have never led a team, but I know from my perspective, things that I wish my manager had known sooner. And so Ben's going to share some insights with us, and we're going to have a really great discussion on little things you can do to help your team be more data literate and really just in general data savvy.
Yeah.
I think that's what our plan is today.
Yep.
And I think the first question I have is, as you have been working with so many people learning data literacy, how did you know that leaders in general had this data literacy problem?
Okay, so Becky and I, at some point in time, we looked at each other and we realized we kept getting the same question over and over again from our clients. We'd be teaching their team members and it would be great. And then they would come back and say, by the way, do you have anything for executives? And the way they would say that, they had kind of almost a funny gleam in their eye, like it was almost mischievous somewhat, but they were essentially saying, help, our leaders need help. And so we kept hearing that over and over again. So, we were trying to do that, and, we do little overviews for them. And so we tried to find ways to help those execs. And then we, at some point a couple of years ago, just said, this needs to be a full program. This needs to be a full book and course. It just keeps coming up and up over and over again. It was just a really high demand offering. And so that's what we did. We set out to do that.
And then a lot of the things that you have been learning about what leaders need to be doing and not doing, mostly come from the data literacy score, this assessment tool that you have teams do, right?
Yeah, so that was the other, I guess, kind of key indicator to us that this was important. So we do this little assessment, right? We call it the data literacy score team-based assessment. And basically what we do is we survey the employees and say, what do you think about the following statements, whether they are applying to your team or not? And so then we report back to the executives, what are the scores and what are some of the main pain points? And so we kept seeing some of the similar ones pop up. We'll talk about those, I know, a little bit. But then what we realized is, well, leaders need to know this information. Leaders are the ones that need to help address, some of these pain points for their team members. And we started to realize that the execs in the room didn't always think it was their job, didn't always have any kind of clear plan about, what they needed to do.
This is why I data people, so I don't have to worry about it.
Isn't it IT's job? They should just go fix all the data problems. But no, we said, hey, you're a marketing leader, you're an HR leader. Guess what? There's actually a lot that you can do to help things move along and get a lot better. So that's why I think the other piece of it for us, the other key input was that assessment. And we still do it. We're doing it right now for a few different organizations, even in different languages now. And so we're, continuing to learn more and more about what some of those pain points are that leaders need to address.
Yeah. And I think that if we can focus in on the things that we have found people struggle with most, maybe that will be most helpful for today.
Yeah.
Just, we have had thousands of people take this test, and you can see, okay, here are patterns. Here are the things people are like, yes, these are kind of the things I'm frustrated with my organization. These are the places I might need help from my leader.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the first lowest scoring thing?
Yeah. It's the first last. Yeah.
So what's the first last thing?
Yeah. It's also the last first thing. Yeah, that's funny enough. So there's 49 statements. It only takes them 12 to 15 minutes. So it goes pretty quick, but there's 49 statements they score. There's a 50th kind of what we call overarching statement, but let's just focus on the 49. So 49 out of 49, all the way at the bottom, lowest score on average for the almost 4 years of running this assessment is the following statement. So my team has access to one or more thriving data communities with members that connect around data and its value as a resource.
And people score this low.
Lowest, yeah. They sort the low. So in other words, what I'm taking from that is, at least for the organizations that have come to us and wanted to take this assessment, that is the one statement their team members put at the very bottom across the entire thing. So they just don't think that applies to them. Do I have access to a thriving data community? No.
Yeah.
They don't feel that way.
Yeah. I remember when I was working at this this research institute, I was the only data viz person on the team.
Right. And
the only way I had access to talk to other data people or figure out like, oh, what tools are people using? What's the latest book I should read? Like just anything like that. That was I had to go to Twitter. That was literally the only place I knew.
And Twitter, that's a very wonderful.
And if
place
I started now, it would have been even worse. Yes. So I wouldn't even have had that.
Can you recommend people turn to Twitter these days? I don't know.
I mean, now LinkedIn is probably better, but back then #DataViz was like the place to go. Yeah. So I would have agreed with that statement too if I had taken the assessment, because I just had no community around me to bounce ideas off of, and having access to that is it just makes you feel less alone in your job. Just putting aside the fact that it helps your skills, it makes you feel like I'm part of a community. We're doing similar things. I have support. I can talk to people. I can have that camaraderie. I can feel like I'm on this journey with other people. And also the very practical piece of learning from them. So so you say, oh, I'm an HR leader, I'm a facilities leader. Data community, that's not my job. Well, the thing is, you can probably very quickly make your team members aware of some things that are available to them. User groups, like you said, that are out there. Yeah, there's lots of local, I found later. I mean, Tableau has some great Tableau user groups, but then also like DC has a DC DataViz group. There's a Women in Data group, DC chapter, you and helping out with them a lot. So those sorts of things they can tap into. I mean, they're great. So in the book, what we do is we take all those 49 statements and we kind of give a little piece of advice about each one of them. So for that one, what I'm saying to leaders is, okay, there's 4 ways to connect. One is learning from experts. Maybe it's a book club, maybe it's a guest speaker. Inviting someone to speak at a lunch thing. A lot of times they'll take you up on that. Learning from each other, that's group number 2. So brown bags. Skill builders. Sometimes people call them things like that. Then there's a part of it where it's not really like, one of the best ways to learn is by doing, right? So there's this piece of like working together. Maybe there's a workshop, maybe there's some kind of a mentorship program. A challenge. I remember someone telling me at work they had this DataViz challenge where I think they participated in Makeover Monday, but together within a group. So like 3 or 4 of them would get together at lunch and share what they bring their laptops and share what they did. And I mean, it's about work, but it's also kind of fun and a way to connect. Exactly. It makes it interesting. And that was one of the 4th groups, the 4th category too. There was like participating in little contests or hackathons. They take effort to run them. When I was at Tableau, I spent a lot of time and energy on their little their big Iron Viz contest. So they do take a lot of time and energy to run them. But in some cases, there are other people out there doing that work for you. So as a leader, you can tap into that as a resource. Yeah, I think if I were a leader, that's what I'd be thinking about right now too. I'd be like, now I have to be a community organizer. Right. I have to run some list. Hackathon. No, I'm in marketing. So, but you can find other people that are doing that and just let your team members know. Yeah. Just like search for a user group. Oh, if you guys want to drop in the chat,
Q&A. Oh, we're getting some already here.
Cool.
All right.
Oh, hi,
Okay.
hi, Lisa.
Lisa saying hi back. Yeah, we got a little Q&A. So
Yeah,
let us know.
and also in the chat, if you want to drop in like a community that you know of and like,
Oh, yeah.
it can be local or it can be something virtual, like online.
Yeah.
You know, this is part of it, is just like, you know, airing out, oh, I'm part of this community and I really like it.
Yep.
The Data Visualization Society is a really great
Yes,
place because they have
awesome.
a Slack and a lot of resources. So being able to disseminate this information,
Yeah, as the leader, right?
as the leader is
Yep.
super, super helpful and important. And I don't think it takes much. You don't really have to do that much in order for it to make a difference.
I don't think so. I mean, there's the heavy lift option where you do it all yourself and you build it. And there's the very low lift option where you look at the great things that are out there. And, you know, yeah, that takes a little bit of time vetting them. That takes a little bit of time, you know, identifying them. And, but if you, or someone on your team you can tap to
finding someone,
do some of that research for you.
it.
Yeah, there's some great stuff out there.
And you might be surprised, like even just putting the idea out there, there might be someone being like, oh, I've been wanting to do something like this.
Oh, and thanks for
Neil.
Neil letting us know. Yeah, so we don't have chat enabled, but in the recording, we'll put a little list of our favorites anywhere in there.
Oh,
thanks,
yeah,
Neil.
you can also put it in the Q&A too, and we'll read them out loud.
Yeah, Hey, that's very, you know, that's like, you know,
innovative.
That's right. That's just rolling with the punches. So send us your favorite resource in the Q&A, and we will read them out loud as we go.
All right, so that's our
Data
first
communities.
one.
That's the lowest. Yep, that's the lowest.
Okay,
yeah.
I feel like that one's a pretty easy one. You can make it easier, you can make it more difficult depending on, and maybe you can scale it up. What I was saying is like, you might just put it out there and there might be someone, I don't know, like me, I'd be like, yeah, I'll put together like a brown bag, or I'll, you know, host this makeover Monday amongst my colleagues. You know, you never know unless you ask.
I mean, it can be as simple as this too, saying, oh, at our next, so let's say there's a person on your team and they had just an awesome data win. And you say, wow, I really wish the rest of my team members kind of just at the next team meeting, could you give us a 5-10 minute overview of what you did, how you were able to do this amazing thing, and, you know, give them a little tip or a trick that came out of it that you found out. So, you know, they get kudos, they get the opportunity to talk about the great thing they did. It helps the culture overall. And, you know, yeah, it's not a ton of extra work. Say, don't put together 20 slides, just a couple, 2-3 little talking points about this great thing you did, and, you know, take it upon yourself to really teach the rest of your team members, your peers. You know, it gives them that kudos, which I think people are, you know, looking for that opportunity.
They do, and it's great practice speaking in front of other people, which, you know, I'm always for more practice.
Lisa's mentioning here, thanks, Lisa, storytelling with data has monthly challenges they've been doing. I've seen that Cole and her team there. There's some data viz book clubs out there that are being run. Yeah, I've seen a few of them too. So, you know, what's funny is your suggestion to use the Q&A instead of the chat is actually a perfect example of number 2, I think, in a way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well,
the second bottom, the second worst or worst scoring factor.
Number 48 out of 49, so way down there at the bottom. Here's the statement that people score pretty low. The ecosystem of data tools and technologies is flexible enough to adjust to the changing needs of the organization. That's in what we call our technology category. So people put that pretty low as well.
Yeah. And when you talk about tools and technologies, are you saying like, you know, like our company has a bunch of Tableau license or Power BI licenses, and I don't like whichever one. And is it that kind of thing? Like they feel stuck in tools, or is there another aspect to it?
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden something changes about what's happening. And now all of a sudden, instead of the tools empowering them to seize that opportunity, like the tools are imprisoning them and preventing them from doing something great. So it's the tool holding them back, not the tool propelling them forward.
They feel like they can't do what they want to do because they're stuck with this tool set.
Yep. Maybe last year it was great, but this year things are a bit different in a way that is making it so that I'm now
things are moving fast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so in fact, in this last year, I would say, well, we saw probably one of those most remarkable examples of a brand new technology being released, and then organizations really struggling to know, you know, how do I direct my team members to either make use of this new technology or not? And of course, I'm referring to
ChatGPT.
Yeah, right. So people are like, okay, what do I do? I mean, there's this data privacy concern, so I don't know what to say, but they're trying to use it on their own. We know from surveys. So anyway, I think they were stuck there in a lot of cases.
I mean, it's such a useful tool that it's hard not to use it.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Right.
because if you know that it's going to save you like 90% of time doing a task, it's like, oh, I want to use it so bad.
Yeah.
But if your manager is not empowering you to use it, because, you know, their hands are tied, I'm sure, in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
It can still be really frustrating.
Right. You're like, well, I mean, now I'm stuck doing it the old way, even though I'm just wasting my time. So it can be a big dissatisfier for team members. And again, you may say, oh, well, you know, I'm not in IT, so like that's not my job as a leader to, you know,
I don't do the tools.
Yeah, the tool that comes from, go talk to the IT team if you don't like your tools. And so you can, like, I guess one of the key messages in the book is, you know, you can have that attitude to say that's IT's job. But then in that case, sure, and you can totally do that. And I can say probably even I've done that in the past. What you, I think, have to live with, though, if you decide to go that path, is that your team members have a lot of dissatisfaction that you're like actively doing nothing about, and you're completely washing your hands of it. And actually, that's really demotivating for team members to be working for a leader who's just saying, sorry, this is what you get, not my deal. And maybe there are cases where that is necessary, but
it reminds me of like what they say to kids: you get what you get and you don't get upset.
Oh, totally. It's like, exactly. Yeah. Don't whine, kid.
Yeah.
You know, are you a leader saying don't whine, kid?
Unfortunately, these are adults and they're still good at different jobs. So.
Yeah, they'll still say like, well, goodbye. Yeah. So and then so I think you have the dissatisfaction, you have that attrition, or you can say, wait a minute, what is a possible thing I could do to at least acknowledge this, to try to kind of work in a direction about it, to incorporate and encourage them to participate in the solution. There's lots of things that you can do there. And so that's a can-do kind of an attitude I like.
Yeah.
My leaders.
You talking about just communicating better reminds me of when I was working as a data viz designer at this research institute, and my boss was just like, she wanted me to do the best work I could. Of course, you know, I think all bosses want that, but she really did. And she wanted me to use the tools that I wanted to use. She knew I was in the community, and I knew like the best tools to use for this and the best tools to use for that. So she wanted to empower me for that. But, you know, she also has constraints on her end. So she was like, look, this is my budget for tools. These are my constraints in terms of like security and like other people who might need to access to the tool. Like, oh, we're going to have to share the tool with the web team, you know, things like that. Like, here are my constraints.
Right.
You go and find the tool that A, you want to use, and B, follows these constraints, and I will get it for you. I will give you the company credit card, and you can sign up for it.
I'll make that commitment, right? Yeah. And I mean, what I like about that you just described is that they weren't saying the sky's the limit, do whatever you want. Right. I mean, as much as you'd love to hear that, I mean, that leads to disillusionment so often, right?
We live in the real world.
Exactly.
There's a budget.
You've got some things you just kind of can't work around. So, but, you know, having the leader kind of, communicate that to you, share that with you, help you see the big picture, and then find a path forward anyway. That's what it's all about, I think. Yeah.
So tools. I think my big takeaway here is that one small thing you can do is just think about, have you communicated the constraints that you have in terms of tools to your team? Because if you literally cannot do, even if you can literally not do anything about it, like you said, just saying, look,
here are our constraints, and here's where they're coming from. Not in a blaming way, not in a, like, you know, pointing the finger and saying that organization or department is so terrible. You know, that is not really, I mean, I get the temptation to do that, because, you know, you're frustrated yourself. And it's an easy way to pass the buck and all that. But mostly, I think then people pick up that this is a leader who is looking for a way to blame other people and absolve themselves of responsibility for making the situation better. But what your leader did was not say the sky's the limit. They said, here's a way we can make progress, even though there are constraints. So, and maybe sometimes the people just don't know your constraints. And
how could they?
Unless you tell them, how are they going to know? They're not in those conversations. They're not hashing out the budget. You know, maybe they're involved in helping, but probably more than likely they're not. So
and what that also did for me is I felt empowered to go and find a solution. So it's like, sure, I could just be like, oh, never mind, let's just use what we already have. But if I do want to use something new, I have to go and do this research myself and present it to her. And I think you can do that too with your team members, is you can tell them, okay, these are my constraints. If you have any great ideas to get around it, I'm not sure how to do it, but if you have something, I will 100% take it up to my leadership and figure out how we can make it work.
So it's not as a leader, not doing it all for them. You're not basically saying, what's your problem? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go now do everything I need to do to fix it. And then I'll like serve up the solution to you on a platter.
Right.
Instead, you're saying you're kind of recruiting them to be part of finding the way forward with, in some cases, with inflexible tools. You might feel challenged as a leader to know what the right solution is because you don't know all the tools yourself. It isn't like you have time to become super knowledgeable about all of them, right? So you may kind of feel at a loss as to what.
They're coming out fast too.
Yeah, they are, right? Yeah, you may feel good today, but wait till next month.
There's so many pros and cons too with tools. I mean, we could talk a whole new webinar about tools.
Yeah.
But know that your team is probably frustrated with the tools that they. What did you say? It was like instead of empowered, they were imprisoned.
Imprisoned, yeah. Actually, with this one, okay. So as you probably know, well, for those of you who follow Alli and I and the whole organization here. Yes, I wrote the book, but Alli designed the cover, right? And I love it. And she's great at that. And I know she designed Neil's cover too. And Neil's right here in the chat. She didn't just do the cover. She did the diagrams inside. And this is for us, our favorite one of the diagrams she made is for the point where we address this exact issue about the inflexibility of tools. So I got to find it. And who else loved it?
Yes, my daughters loved it. I bought the book and I showed it to them and they just loved the little happy faces.
So brilliant. Alli came up with this idea to describe ways that you can be flexible in your tools and technologies. So a few different suggestions, when you can, adopting new technologies, but it isn't just about always new technologies. Sometimes flexibility is about taking your existing technologies and updating them, modifying them. You don't have to get a brand new tool every time. Sometimes you just may need to take the one you have and make it a bit better with some kind of enhancement.
More licenses or something.
Yeah. Sometimes you actually need to kind of work with IT to sunset some outdated technology. That's number 3. And then number 4 is there's a kind of a way to kind of design for flexibility. And there's a little bit more to that in the book, but it gets into like open sources and modular components. And there's a way to kind of look for some solutions. What's a hallmark of a solution that has a good chance that I'm going to be able to use flexibility within it, as opposed to what we see a lot of times we call like vendor lock-in. So the technology vendors, like kind of purposely, we can all relate with iPhones, it's like locking you in. Yeah. Everyone's trying to keep you in their tool.
In their ecosystem, right?
So there's ways you can kind of find out, okay, here's an example of a tool that might not suffer from that, at least not to the same degree. So, but we love the diagram, and so did your daughters, which I think is awesome.
Anytime I can put a little happy face in a diagram, I'm winning.
It's going to be a winner.
Hashtag winning. Okay, so that was number 2.
Yeah, 3.
The third lowest one is.
Yeah, and I swear I didn't doctor the data. Okay, I know this is a little self-serving, but the third lowest scoring, so 47 out of 49. I think you already know where this is going. Here is what people score pretty low. My organization provides valuable training opportunities to help me and my teammates develop the knowledge and skills necessary to effectively work with data in our roles. That's in the people category. So the problem is with the people and their abilities. And
they felt like they weren't getting opportunities enough to get trained on data stuff.
Yeah. From their point of view, they seem to score that statement relatively low. In other words, what that indicates to me is they don't feel like that's a real great strength, that they're at their fingertips being provided with a lot of great training opportunities.
Yeah. And it makes me think about, okay, so if I am being presented with training opportunities, what does that really mean? Like, is the company just hosting these big events and I just join in, or people like offering me a list of things to try? Because I remember when I worked with a big defense contractor, and they would just give you a percentage of your salary as training. What do they call it? Like training reimbursement, kind of a thing.
A stipend.
Most companies do that, and most people just never used it because it was like you learned about this training stipend on your first day, right? When you get the benefits package, and then nobody ever talks about it again.
Yeah, and it's probably not like tuition reimbursement where it's enough to go get a degree,
right? No,
but it's enough to like, okay,
not nowadays anyway.
Take a cool little course or workshop or boot camp or something like that.
Right, and so the problem I think was that I just didn't know what to take. Like what do I just like take an online, I don't know.
Right.
I'm trying to
How
put
do I
myself in
begin
that
to start?
mindset.
Yeah. How do I
when
begin to
was-
figure out what I
when
use
I was a
this?
data analyst, it was
Right.
like,
What's a good use of that,
exactly,
of that budget?
in my
No idea.
time, too.
Right. Right.
So this actually made me think,
Yeah.
if I had had a list
Mhm.
of courses like maybe that other people in the company were taking,
Mhm.
you know, and just I could get some ideas there, and all the manager would have to do is like what, ask HR, you
I
think?
think so. They should. You're probably gonna. Yes. I mean, for the manager to run around and somehow like find that list themselves is going to be probably
Yeah.
impractical. But
Yeah.
they probably have an HR generalist or a learning and development partner in HR, and you can simply say to them, "I really want to know what are the most commonly used training programs that people are getting reimbursed using."
Right.
This.
People are using their money on.
An
right?
HR generalist, a good one, or a learning and development specialist, will see it as their job to come up with a top 5 or a top 10. Yeah, I would think so. I've never asked them that, but I would imagine that's myself. I've never gone, and I don't have the opportunity right now since we have such a small organization. But I got to think, if you went to them and say, "Hey, I really want to know how my team members can best use that budget. What are the most commonly used data training programs?" It seems to me like they're going to do a little bit of homework for you, and they should be able to come up with an answer.
Yeah, maybe there was some feedback, like, oh yeah, people, every time someone takes this course, they love it, something like that.
And maybe what they give you is anecdotal.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard these courses are
I
great.
mean,
Maybe they give you
need
some
much more?
Pareto chart. I highly doubt it. But yeah.
It doesn't need to be super data driven, right? It's just like a lot of people have taken this course and really liked it.
We hear the following courses well liked. Okay, I would love to have the stats on that. Yes, sure. But even a good starting point is, okay, people, it seems to me that what we're hearing is anecdotally, people are liking this course on Excel, Tableau, data literacy. So, yeah, because I think what you're getting at there is, well, how do you know if it's a good one? I mean, you can Google search it for your team, and you're going to get some big long list, and who knows if those are any good or not. I mean, then maybe they're just thrown together anyway. So doing a little extra work to figure out how we can find, vetted, highly recommended sorts of training programs is probably worth a little bit of extra time and effort, because coming up with a list of ones that aren't vetted might result in a lot of wasted time and money.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem, I mean, that's really hard going on the internet to find a course, but it's not hard at all just to send those 2 emails, send it to HR, forward that list to your team and be like, hey, if you haven't used your tuition reimbursement yet this year, these are 3 courses that are really highly recommended. Yeah. And that's just so easy.
It's pretty easy.
So easy.
And I mean, at least then you've started to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Maybe you haven't solved the problem completely. So what we'd say this little section in the book. Okay. What we say is the following. We said, here are 8 characteristics of what we would consider to be well-designed training programs. And we try to hold ourselves to this as well. And, in some of these 8s, we do great. And some of these 8, we're still working on it. But number 1 is, okay, a training program that's got really clear and relevant learning objectives. Number 2, there's some customizability there to your specific situation. Number 3, there's some participation component to it. Number 4, there's like a fun and engaging aspect of it. Number 5, the trainers that they've got are qualified and they have the credentials. Number 6, there's practical examples and real world case studies, so not just theoretical. Number 7, the trainees themselves can be assessed and give feedback. And then number 8, there's some kind of follow-up touch points where later on down the road that learning is reinforced. Oh, okay. So those would be ways you'd say, oh, if you see those traits in a course, hey, that's a good sign. Yeah, and you can just start with testimonials, because I think that a lot of that stuff kind of starts leads to high, that's the what is it, leading indicator? The leading indicator, the lagging indicator. Lagging indicator. People like it. There's a good chance they got a bunch of those, I would say, if people are loving it. Yeah. So those are the bottom 3, and those were one of 7 that roll up to 7 main factors that help leaders empower their teams. So the first one was related to culture. The second one was technology. Right. The third one related to people. Yeah. And we have 4 other ones. Leadership factors. So what are the 4? So 7 factors, each have 7 guiding principles. So 49 in all. So we've talked about one from each of those three. The other four are ethics, purpose, data, and process. So, ethics, we start with that. And we even have a free chapter from the book, as the first chapter is ethics. And we just put it out there. You can just get it. Even in the course itself on our site, you can take it as a sample lesson. You don't have to sign up or give us your email address. You can just see it online and just watch the video and, go through the ethics lesson all on your own there. Because we think it's important to kind of get that message out there. We need to be able to use data ethically, no matter what department we're in as leaders. We set the stage for that. It really flows down from leadership, right? So that part of it is a giveaway. Two is purpose. So this one, when I first started writing it, I was like, well, the thing I hear a lot is these really talented data people feeling like they're not moving the needle. So they're just working on projects that are pet projects that don't mean anything or don't contribute in any meaningful way. Someone who's a really talented data pro is going to get really fed up with that and leave pretty quick. So I wanted to try to give leaders some principles to follow to make sure that what they are doing with data is actually helping them achieve something meaningful, and that is all clear and to their team member, because they're the ones that help set that up as the leader. So that's purpose. There's a section on data itself, right? The data quality, the timeliness and freshness. There's so much about the data that leaders need to kind of be aware of and look into. It's an asset. And so is it an asset that's sufficient? Is it an asset that is maybe very flawed? It's going to be flawed in some ways. That's a given. So, but what can you do as a leader, no matter what your department you're in, to contribute to that asset improving over time? Okay, well, then you're going to have a competitive advantage, right? Because it means tomorrow your data is going to be even better if you find a way. And then the last one we haven't mentioned yet is one I've spent a lot of my career in this category, which is process. So when I was in continuous improvement, specifically Lean and Six Sigma, it was all about process, mapping your
documenting the process.
Documenting the process. So I think a lot of times what happens is people think, oh, data is about getting great data and great tools. And then as long as we do that and go hire smart people, we're good. And what they don't think about is your processes completely don't allow for data. They actually block it out. Maybe some decisions are happening and, there's some leaders that don't want data to be brought into the view. And so this is a recipe for disaster, because your team members are like, there's all this great data, we're using it, and guess what? The processes just shut them out. So
can you think of an example of that? I'm trying to think of what that is.
Yeah. So let's say you're going to decide it's a more strategic question maybe, but what product category do we need to move into next year? And so let's say, for example, our little business, maybe do we need to add, I don't know, a new product category, and maybe AI training. And you look at it and go, okay, I did a little bit of research. Here's what I'm finding out about AI training. Here's what's happening with that space. And then you present that to me and I just say to you, that's fine, but we're not doing that. And because what I'm saying is, well, I just don't want to, I'm not comfortable. My gut tells me it's not something to do. Besides, maybe I'm actually preventing that information from being shared. And you might say, well, does that really happen? I think a lot of leaders are in that boat where you have to open yourself up a lot if you're saying as a leader, okay, this decision is going to be made, but we're going to take some data into account here. Right. Because what if the data says the thing you don't want to do? And a lot of leaders,
it's going to be a lot of work.
Right. Or, oh boy, this is not convenient. This is not a convenient answer for me. It's an inconvenient truth, shall we say, right? So there's a good example actually right there, with global warming. So, okay, it's not really great data. Let's just, let's block it.
I want to do the usual.
Yeah. Let's undermine it. So those are decision-making processes, but there's a lot of other smaller processes that happen day in and day out. Let's say we do our little newsletter, right? So, okay, maybe the newsletter, we have data about what's worked well in the past. We can probably mine that. But what if the person who owns the newsletter just wants to make it how they've been making it, and they know how to do it, and they don't want to think about a new way to do it? It's just a headache to them. And so they're in some leadership position over that deliverable, and they block out data because it's too much work or whatever. Yeah.
So
there's a fear there.
To fix that, you would bring assessing the metrics of the newsletter into your process,
Yeah.
and then like adjusting what you're doing based on that. That would
Yeah.
be part of what you do as you're doing the newsletter.
Yeah.
One of the steps is to assess the metrics.
And even it's funny, I just thought of that example because that's the one we map out, and you create a little process map for us. And so then it starts with as a leader. Okay, the very first thing is, and you mentioned before how the starting point is so easy.
Yeah.
It's like not rocket science. So for a leader, the first thing with this one is just see what you're doing as a process and then map it out. What does that mean? Just write out the steps in a list, even. It doesn't have to be fancy. Okay, now you've got a little mini process map. You can go through every step and say, what are the ways we can use data in each one of these steps? How do we know how well they're doing today? What data do we have to make this process run more smoothly, to improve the outcomes of it? But yeah, it just starts with, your eyes and using eyes of process thinking to look at what you're doing as a process.
Yeah. And maybe thinking about, okay, whenever I make that decision, what inputs am I using to make that decision? Am I using data, or am I just using what someone else tells me? So therefore, what are they using to make that decision?
Right. Is this just their own opinion or the way they've always done it? But if you have a process map, and ideally you'd have some data about how well the process is going. Maybe if it's an email newsletter, you're saying, okay, what's our click-through rate or something like that? And then you're realizing, is it getting better or worse? But also with regard to the process itself, is it taking you more time or less time? Are you making more errors or fewer errors? And so what's the quality of it if we were to rate it? So there are all kinds of ways of using data to assess a process. And then if all you do is map it out and say, okay, what's one way data can make this process better? You're already, I think, addressing what many leaders never, ever do, which is that data is a tool to make our processes more efficient. And, you may say, oh, well, I'm not some Six Sigma master black belt or something. But again, you don't need to be. You just need to be a leader that cares enough about the processes to think about them that way.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, just writing out the list, that's something that
super simple.
Yeah, most people don't do, but I can see how that would be really, kind of like writing out your goals, right? Sometimes if you just write out the goal and you can see it.
Those are the last categories.
We got all the 7,
all
so
7
ethics,
categories.
Purpose, data, process, people, technology, and culture.
Boom.
So that was the 7.
You got it.
And the cool thing about, I think, how unique this book is that first you were in a leadership role in Tableau. Now you're obviously in a leadership role here at Data Literacy. But just beyond your personal experience, you were able to see like thousands of responses on the Data Literacy score and just kind of almost like borrow all the mistakes and strengths that other leaders were showing, and then pull it all together in a data-driven way to see what people were in real life struggling with when it came to data literacy. And I was just wondering, like, as we're putting all this together in the book, what do you think was the most surprising thing to you as you were writing all this down?
Well, what was surprising to me was how easy it was to write it. That's one thing. In the past, I've really struggled with writer's block and breaking through that.
Like, where am I going with this?
Now I had a writing task I've never had before, which is write 49 2 or 3 pagers. And that turned out to be a really easy task. I just needed to say, okay, today I get a brand new one of these 49 items, and I just get to think about a few pages of describing the problem, what I think about it, giving some advice, and then move on to the next one. So it was really a fun book to write. I didn't expect that. So for those of you interested in the writing process, maybe that's a kind of a good way. Just break it down into really small chunks and just boom, 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 go through them,
Well,
one
also,
by one.
I think also that since it was so data driven, it's like the problem and the solution were just so clear. It makes it a lot easier to write on.
And I could go and I could always say, okay, here's my new writing task. Let me go look at the data and see where this ranks within the category overall. And so, I got to kind of like, do a little bit of research on each one.
Was there anything else that kind of surprised you reading or writing that book?
I think it's that, like, when I'm looking at what are the pieces of advice, this kind of came up already. Like, it was not rocket science. It wasn't like they needed some advanced degree to fix a problem or to start making progress on it. So, there's practical things you can do today, take you a minute or 2 or less, and you can just start moving things in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the things that we talked about with it. They were just so easy. Like the first one about
HR,
like the data communities, like just Googling being like, what are 5 data communities in the Bellevue area? Or Seattle or whatever, or the DC area, and then sending that list around, forwarding that list to your team, or emailing HR and being like, what trainings have
do people seem to like
people been enjoying? And then about the community, just asking your team, what tools would you like to be using? Hey, here are my constraints. Do any of these fit these constraints? Just it's just like a 10-second interaction. And then in your team's mind, you are someone who's really supporting their data literacy.
I think you signal that you're interested in those topics. You signal that you want to, and you have to follow that up. You can signal something and then drop it, like a hot potato, but you have to follow through. But the starting process is not difficult.
And I would really encourage people to check out the free ethics chapter and the free ethics lesson. Do you have that link, Ben? I can send it to you real quick. Can you drop that in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Go find it here real quick. So we're looking at the ethics lesson for the course. The free lesson, well, what it does, of course, gets that teaching about ethics out there, and people need to be it is. Thank you to the folks that joined.
We hope you enjoyed this. This has been, I mean, it's like I said at the beginning, I have never led a team, but I'm slowly collecting these things and hope to be a great data leader.
However, you did win the Community Leader Award
I
think that's actually a really important point. So the Data Visualization Society Information is Beautiful Awards last year, Alli won, as probably many of you know, the Community Leader Award. Now, so what, because this whole time you've been saying, oh, I've never led a team. Oh, I've never led a team. But yet you won a leadership award without leading a team. So and maybe that's something to, I did write the book from the point of view of people who have groups of people reporting to them. That was certainly the lens I was using and the audience I was thinking about talking to. But the thing is, you can definitely, and I mean, I was always told this too in my earlier years of my career, oh, you can be a leader without having the responsibility. And sometimes that felt a little trite or cheesy. Like, actually, I'd like just to become a leader and have the salary that goes along with it, But also, in some ways, it is also true. I mean, you can have a huge influence and impact without necessarily having all the burden, really, of a leadership title.
And I think once you start acting like that too, that was my experience at work. It's like anything that I started moving myself toward by myself, like you start acting like a manager and like thinking of these ideas yourself, like you are the one who puts together the internal community about data and stuff. And then people start seeing you as the leader. And then next time it's promotion time,
it works out well. And a leader loves someone, a good leader loves someone on their team who is very proactive. A terrible leader will be very intimidated by that. And so if that's the case, you start doing these great things and proactive things, and then all of a sudden you're feeling a lot of pressure from the top to stop, or you're sensing that there is a lot of negativity resulting for you in those good things you're putting in motion. It's probably a good signal to you that you're working for the wrong leader.
You gotta go.
You gotta, and I doubt it will get better. It's like a mindset thing. It's an attitude thing. And if your leader is trying to clamp down on your opportunities to contribute, as long as you're doing so in a humble way, as long as you're doing so in a way that's not being like critical or what have you, then they should embrace that and thank you for that, and just be like loving the fact that you're taking such proactive steps.
If you don't get that support, you got to spread your data wings and just fly away.
There are, as we can all attest, there are greener pastures, each with its own struggles and frustrations. And, I think what I love and what I've loved about working with you too, specifically, is just like, sometimes you can just decide to have a certain perspective, even with the challenges and difficulties, that I'm going to try to find solutions. And, especially as a small business owner, I will say, when you find someone like that, I mean, that to me is so wonderful, because, well, number one, it isn't the leader's job to always come up with all the ideas and implement them. And number two, you wonder to yourself, I wonder what else they're going to come up with. And that to me is such a oh, if I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this person's got this aspect to them, like that's really exciting as a leader to have someone like that on your team.
Yeah. So keep your eyes out for people who are like taking initiative, because I think you can really lean on those people to help you with some of these things.
Right. You want to be careful about leaning on them too much, and like all of a sudden saying, oh, great job. Now you're burdened with a whole bunch of
part-time job
responsibilities. And like, okay, now this is your extra 20% of your time. But yeah, I mean, and that's always that balance, doing these great things while looking at the workload. And I think a leader does that too. They're in touch and in tune with
priorities.
Maybe if someone's being a little overworked, and aware of those scenarios that can pop up for someone who is proactive, for someone who is wanting to become a leader. They may have a tendency of burning themselves out. So
taking on too many things.
So okay, so watch out for
that.
Speaking of which, we're coming up with another book here, actually, Alli, since we have a few minutes left. And by the way, let us know again, folks, if you have any questions or Q&A. We'll keep the Q&A open here. In the last few minutes, anything else you want to do? Maybe you can tell us a bit about the one you're working on right now.
So it's called Chart Spark, Harness Your Creativity and Data Communication. Might want to add something to it, like
working title.
Working title, like maybe like harness your creativity and data communication, like to stand out or to be innovative. Like I just feel
a little phrase at the end, maybe
one thing on like what you get.
You feel like the subtitle's hanging. Okay.
I feel like it needs to like, saying let's be more creative.
Why?
Yeah, why? I mean, I think people like that the idea because maybe it's more fulfilling or it sounds fun. But really, there's just a lot of ways that creativity can help with your work. Because I actually asked my Elevate Data Viz learning community that question. I was like, what if you were more creative today, like wave the magic wand and you were more creative today in your data viz work, like what would that do for you? And it was so cool to read the responses. They're like, I would stand out more in my work. I would be able to make a bigger impact with my work because it would draw more attention to it. And it would, because when you are being more creative, creativity is having a new idea, but it also has to be useful.
Right.
It's like new idea, like the typical thing where your kid draws this like weird thing and you're like
Goldberg machine or something.
Creative.
Right. Yeah. Creative is a euphemism for
that's different.
Wacky. Yeah.
To really be creative, like in our work, it has to be new, but then also useful. So when you are doing things like that, what is that doing for you? Like why even bother trying to hone that skill? So anyway, that's why I want to edit the title, because that's what the whole book is about, is like giving you these tools in your hands that you can start using today to be more creative in your data viz work, so that you can stand out, be more innovative, like do work that feels really fulfilling to you. And then you feel more fulfilled in that. So so stay tuned for that, probably later this year. We'll have it out.
And those of you, I think that the presentations are online now, right? For the Outlier conference.
Outlier,
So where I really kind of fell in love with this book she's putting together was when she kind of gave an overview of that for the Outlier conference, right? So we'll add that link here in the description for the recording on YouTube, but she gives a kind of the early version, maybe of some of those thoughts and ideas.
Trying to change your perspective on creativity and how, even when you're learning something new, you are being creative, and it doesn't have to be, the idea doesn't have to be new to the entire world for it to have value. It can be new to you and it still was a creative idea. And that just kind of opens people's mind to think, I don't have to like,
it's not a pressure
to be Albert Einstein to be creative.
Never before seen in human history.
It feels more achievable.
Right. Just apply some idea in a new way, or maybe just new to you.
So I talk. That's what the Outlier talk is about. So if you are interested in that, we'll put that in the description also.
And was the title of the chat of that presentation? Do you remember?
That was Harness. That might have been another Harness Your Creativity. I don't remember, but I think it's something about harness your creativity and data.
But it wasn't Chart Spark, right? That came recently.
I just thought of that.
And what was like the creative spark behind the title?
I was talking to someone about I think maybe the intro of the book. Or like I was trying to do a diagram that brings together all the chapters, because I talk about caring for your creativity, coaxing it out, and communicating it. And I was talking to her about how it's almost like I'm telling you, don't just wait around to get struck by lightning. You need to grab that lightning rod and like hold it up so that you can attract the good ideas. Like don't be passive about it. And then the idea of the lightning rod, lightning, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's perfect, like a spark. And then chart spark is just like rhymey. So that's
they have that. What is that? What is that like? Alliteration or something, or like that it's like similar sounding words back to back.
I don't know, someone probably knows.
Yeah, someone who's like an English expert.
Almost like a
where two words sound together, but they don't quite rhyme. Yeah.
So it's just nice to say.
It all fell into place. I remember the day. I remember you say, "I know what the title for my book is," and you just had this big smile on your face. So yeah, I love that.
It's catchy.
But it came from a conversation with someone talking about the ideas and how you can arrange them, and then seeing that analogy that kind of fell in with your description of it. And then the extra cherry on top being the way the words go well together. Being like,
and you can use emojis too. I use the chart emoji and then the lightning bolt emoji. Like a shorthand. So that's why an extra
social media, watch out. We got more, we got lightning bolt emojis coming at you. All right, everybody, we're out of time. So thanks again for joining. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. For those of you watching the recording, hope you enjoyed it as well. Yeah, so check out the book, check out the course, and look for more to come from us over at Data Literacy. And anything to wrap it up?
Yeah, go out there and be a great data leader.
Be a great data leader. You can do it. You can get started.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.